Welcome to the Week in Mobile, episode number 6, recorded Friday, February 25th, 2011. Are the Smurfs selling contraband? In this episode, Apple disses Nintendo, the Android marketplace grows like stink, but it's BlackBerry app world where you can make the money. And why does the FTC hate the Smurfs? All this and more coming up now on the Week in Mobile. Welcome, everybody. This is the Week in Mobile, episode number 6. Everybody, do the number 6. Do the number 6. Number 6. That's 666. Turn this thing off right now. We are live late on a Friday evening. My name is Rob Woodbridge. I'm one of your co-hosts from untether.tv, robwoodbridge.com, in case you care. With me, up in the top left corner, your vantage point, is one Sir Anthony Risk, co-founder of Zeebu Mobile and also the author of Beginning BlackBerry Development, which I keep saying is due for a revision because I'm no longer a beginner. It's time to get to that next level. Anthony, welcome. Thanks for coming on again. 6 straight weeks. Right next to him and right above me right there, if you look up, it's Mr. Jeff Bacon. You can find Jeff at about.me/Jeff Bacon. He's now the Director of all things mobile at BitHeads, which can be found at bitheads.com, but go to about.me/Jeff Bacon. You'll find everything about him. Jeff, thanks for coming on, man.
Good to see you guys again.
Yes, you are heading to GDC next week. It should be a good time had by all.
I hope so. It usually is down there in San Francisco. I haven't had a bad trip there yet, so.
No, a lot of people have had some good trips in San Francisco, dude. Just set yourself right up for there.
Nice.
So this is the podcast, video or audio, depending on what you're doing, where we rehash the stuff that's important in mobile that happened over last week. And we're not going to start with a story from last week. We're actually going to start with not even GDC, but what's happening right next to the Moscone Center at the very same time that Iwata, the CEO of Nintendo, is doing his keynote at 10 o'clock Pacific time on Tuesday, March 2nd, but it doesn't matter because right next to him in a different building is the Apple iPad 2 announcement. So they're having a huge shindig. This, as Anthony said before the show, this is basically, I don't even know how to say this politely. This is Apple ripping down their pants and showing how big the schlong they've got, isn't it? This is a pretty. I don't even know if it's that or if it's just that they don't care what else is going on. Who knows? But it's happening. iPad 2 is what they're going to assume is being launched on March 2nd in San Francisco. And are you guys finally going to... You guys don't have an iPad, do you?
Oh, I have an iPad.
Oh, yeah. Anthony has an iPad.
I love my iPad. Wow.
No.
I love it.
Good place.
What about you, Bacon? Have you heard anything about what's... do you know what's going on there?
Well, actually, I've heard a couple of different rumors about what the iPad 2 is going to be. In fact, just most recently, either today or yesterday, or Engadget or Gizmodo had an article on it quoting a source that they've had success with in the past, which kind of ramped down the expectations of the iPad 2 to basically being, an upgraded processor, more memory, a little bit thinner, having a couple cameras on it, but the same screen resolution, and otherwise basically the same physical size, aside from being a little bit thinner and possibly lighter. No SD card slot, which, I think most people would figure that was a bogus rumor. But
yeah.
So it's pretty much just a nominal upgrade to the iPad itself, which is kind of interesting because of the competition out there with what Motorola is doing with their Zoom, and in particular, just in the last couple weeks, the videos that you've seen on the net of what the playbook can do is just blowing my mind and making me want that playbook even more. It looks amazing and so overpowered, maybe even compared to what you really need. If you can play Need for Speed and Quake at the same time as running a video and control them all at once, maybe you don't quite need that much power, but it certainly looks really cool compared to an iPad 2 that basically looks the same as an iPad and doesn't really add any earth-shattering features.
Well, it's different because I heard differently, obviously, that they're actually talking about an amped processor in this thing, and and a high-res Retina display, but they don't know if that's true or not. They said that there was evidence in iBooks, their latest release of iBooks 1.2, that there was a cover art that was 2048 by 1536, suggesting that the resolution would be a little bit better, but who knows? People are thinking that this is like iPad kind of 1.5, or you know, there's going to be another release in the fall. Is the speculation and the rumors, and why not? You know, most people will go out and buy this.
But if they were going to do that, why didn't they do that, 3 months ago? Why wait until everybody else had time to get their stuff in order and have products ready to launch? If they launched an iPad 2, which is more like an iPad 1.5, and BlackBerry comes out with a playbook that's awesome, and Motorola has their Zoom being really good, and Samsung comes out with a Galaxy Tab 2, and if it's really good, suddenly everybody else is caught up versus, just catching up to what Apple was doing before.
Yeah, well, I think that certainly that this is not going to be the be-all and end-all tablet, but it's having a front-facing and back-facing camera. I think they're doing a concurrent event in the UK, and it's obviously going to show FaceTime, over the device, and it's apparently sleeker, it's thinner, it's not rounded in the back. It's everything that they did from probably the iPhone 3GS to the iPhone 4, and that's fine with me because. That the difference between the 3GS and the 4 was, a wonderful. It's a great device, the 4, anyways. So
yeah, it was huge. See the Retina display. I think it's just if they did it, that puts them way out ahead of almost anybody else. But the thing is, I think it's just too expensive.
Yeah, John Gruber says that they say he's almost always correct. He says that's not going to happen, Retina display. But
I don't get why I guess I've seen the iPhone 4. I've used it because I have friends that have the iPhone 4, and it's a great device.
Yep.
Is it orders of magnitude better than the 3GS? No, it's a little bit better. The Retina display is a little bit clearer on it, but it's not like looking at the 3GS and looking at a 4. You go, oh my God, I can't believe I ever looked at a 3GS screen before. The difference is not like going from VGA to HD. It's a little bit clearer, but it's not a monumental difference. So if they take the iPad and do the same thing, there'll be a bigger difference on iPad just because there's a larger screen real estate and people are using it for much longer reading activities, which is what a higher res screen helps a lot for. But I guess I'm not quite sure why that is such if they do that, suddenly it'll be way better than everything else because it'll just, it'll have a higher res screen, but everybody else has other stuff that's better.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you take a market leader like the iPad, like undisputedly the market leader, right? I mean, there's very little competition out there right now.
So.
But, suddenly you've got a thing that says you're double the resolution of everybody else. That just makes you look like you're so far, and you're so far ahead of everyone.
But then Brim says we're double the speed and we have double the battery life that they do.
Well, see, the battery life could be a big thing. The speed, I don't know. Apple doesn't really talk about megahertz, and, you'll get Mike Lazaridis from RIM talking about dual core this and everything, and nobody will listen because it's just the wrong message.
Well, what
we've optimized whatever. We put our own custom processor. This is the fastest one, and Steve Jobs will not Steve Jobs, but Tim Cook will stand up on stage and say, "This is the fastest tablet out there."
Yep. Well, if you believe the rumors, it's the Apple's next gen A5, whatever they're going to call it. I think it was an A4 processor in the iPad 1. But it's a multi-core ARM Cortex A9. That means absolutely nothing. That's the only time that I'm going to use a hardware reference to me, because what Cook will get up there and say is, "Dude, it's fast."
Yeah.
Sold. And but it's been a certainly rumor-filled week when it came to Apple. There's talk of them actually killing the 4-fee or 4-pay service, Mobile Me, and just giving that away for free, which I think is pretty smart. As being the guy who paid $99 for that so I could sync my calendar. I'm afraid actually not to pay now because I don't know if it'll sync. So I think that's something that they're going to do, and I think that this plays very well into the iTunes, the whole iTunes in the cloud, where there was an announcement that they had basically the huge data center that is for iTunes, and that's going to come at some point, which is going to be a streaming music service. And that's going to be massive as well, considering they're talking about streaming music on mobile being a $5.5 billion industry now, or going forward in the next couple of years. And Apple's going to own that, right?
Yeah, and I think I wonder if that would be announced I mean, because they've leaked like the fact that it is iTunes related, that big data center. That's interesting. I think again that's just their Apple's platform lock-in, right? So give the users everything that they want, so they'll just keep buying your devices. And
I gotta say, of all the stuff that Apple has done in the last, like basically since the 3GS launched, to me the 3GS was a big device. It was a big speed improvement over the 3G network performance and everything. It was a great device. Since then, nothing of that Apple's done has really caught my attention. Like, oh wow, I need to get this, or this is going to make a big, huge difference in my life over what I have now. If they get the cloud going, if they enable me, like just built in without buying a separate app and trusting some of their service to access my iTunes library from my device wherever I am, that's big for me. Because I did buy a 64 gig iPhone or 32 gig iPhone, whatever the maximum was, because I run out of space otherwise. I got so much stuff to put on it, and I still don't have my whole library on it. So being able to access that whenever I want, that would be big for me.
Yeah, and I think that who has the cloud to do that? The same guys that brought together all the record labels under iTunes, right? It just seems logical that that's next. And I can't remember the company that they bought, but they did buy a company about a year ago that did this, that basically streamed iTunes, and they haven't moved anything with it yet. So we should see this coming soon. It's pretty amazing if they can do that. You think about what they can do with everything, and all of a sudden the iPad is the conduit to a lot of this. Speaking of the iPad, this is going to be an interesting thing. We know what's going to happen on the 2nd. It's going to be in conflict, with obviously Nintendo's chief executive doing the keynote at GDC, and they were actually talking about a little bit of a focus on games as well, because this is something that obviously the iPad does exceptionally well, which is play games, and it just the timing seemed to be a little suspect. So we'll see how
the
this
really
goes.
interesting part will be if they do a focus on games then, because Nintendo is launching their 3DS tomorrow.
Yeah.
So if they go on and do a big thing about games, just like 4 days after Nintendo launches their 3DS, and in conflict with when Nintendo's president is speaking at GDC, could you plan it any better? No, because they had to have planned it.
It's Apple.
That's Apple saying we're bigger than GDC.
It is.
We're the biggest thing, but it'll be interesting.
But it was almost that they saw the CTIA. They avoided. Was it CES? It was CES where they didn't announce the the iPhone on T-Mobile. Did I just forget that?
Verizon.
Yeah, Verizon. Sorry. Yeah, they didn't announce the iPhone on Verizon. They did it a couple of days after CES, and everybody thought, well, this is a new thing, because they didn't want to steal the thunder of CES and all the tablet talk. And so this is just kind of putting that to rest and saying, okay, this is back with a vengeance in the old school Apple world, and they have a right to be cocky, I think, at this point, because of a report that came out where literally they said, in Q3. Was it Q3 or Q4? As this takes a second to load. But it was Q3 2010, 4.5 million tablets were sold, and 4.2 million of those were Apple. It just seems this might be a little bit dated, and I think that there's going to be a massive impact as these other tablets come in, but those are staggering numbers. I'm actually surprised that there were 300,000 other tablets sold, because I don't even, who were they?
Well, especially in Q3, because Samsung didn't launch their tablet until Q4.
I know.
Yeah.
So
I think that, unless they're counting the Windows Media tablet PCs or something, the Windows tablet PCs or something.
Computing, right?
But I think the big thing is, so like Jeff said, there's basically no I
got a pen here.
I wanted to love that so much back then, but I
have one.
But like
Jeff
said,
here,
right?
Yeah.
So basically no competition. For the iPad. So the fact that Apple dominated it is not a surprise. But the big thing is that they sold, 4.2 million. And from Apple's point of view, the thing is that it shows how far ahead they were in thinking of the rest of the industry, right? They were at least a year ahead, because they launched they were ready to launch a tablet a year ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
And at a time when no one really believed in the market as much as they do now. And everyone's caught up. We're catching up now. But they sold, 15 million tablets in their first year, and Apple saw that opportunity, and nobody else saw that opportunity.
No,
that's the thing, right? And what you worry about with Apple is they're looking at something. There's a whole bunch of things they're thinking of. They're developing internally. Some will be released, some won't. But what's the next insight? What's the next thing where they're like a year ahead or a year and a half ahead of everybody else?
It's funny, Anthony, because if you look at the invitation, on the invitation, it actually said, "Come see what 2011 will be the year of." Right? So it really is that. Because I think that when the iPad came out in April of last year in the States, of 2010, I think that's, when did RIM announce the playbook? Close to that time, didn't they? Like in the summer?
No. It was way later than they announced the playbook. Like, they didn't announce the playbook until in the middle of the summer, at least, I think.
Yeah, no, they announced it officially at the BlackBerry Developer Conference.
Oh, yeah, okay, you're right. Officially, they announced it at DevCon.
The rumors started sort of midsummer.
Yeah. So yeah, that's right, because it was going to be the it wasn't going to be the iPad, it was going to be the BlackPad. Remember they registered BlackPad?
People had stupid names for a BlackPad, and I think they're even registered as domains to throw people off, which was kind of a cool thing for RIM to do, right? You know, they're playing with people.
No, they were going to call it the BlackPad, but then when it leaked, they were like, oh no, what do we call it? The playbook. But it just shows you that even then it hasn't launched. I'm going to assume that it's going to launch sometime in March, and it's a good 9 months or 10 months from the time that they announced it, right?
Yep.
So it says to me that they said, well, what's the best thing that we could produce? Okay, that's what we'll announce, and then we got to figure out how to build it. But
which is good. You know what? That's
exactly
to say, because RIM in the past hasn't done that. They haven't said, let's put together the best thing we can be and then build it. They've gone, okay, let's put together a little bit better than what we had before and build it. Yes. So for them to go, you know what? We need to really shake this market up. We need to be not just the iPad. We need to be much better than the iPad.
Yep.
What's it going to be like in a year when we actually get this on the market and design that? That was excellent for them to do. And really, I think that's one thing that's going to keep them from getting, shuffled under the rug of tablets that are out there, because they did let people know ahead of time that we're going to have the best tablet on the market when it comes out, not the best tablet on the market right now, even though it would have been if it had come out then.
Yeah.
And everything you've heard since then, you haven't heard about tablets that have gone way and above what RIM was talking about last summer. So I think it's really a really good sign for RIM overall that kind of a strategy is something that's taken hold and people were able to grasp the idea, which is not the traditional RIM thinking around mobile devices.
No, I'm impressed, and they went out and bought some good companies to be able to fulfill this, and now it looks like they're going to reverse engineer all their other devices to accommodate the new OS from QNX, which is an Ottawa-based company which we love very much. And but what I've heard coming from RIM, if you go to many sites, their whole focus is on the playbook. Like, it is like the whole company has just turned and is focused on the playbook, and they're going to wake up after the playbook launch, and people are going to say, "Hey, when is this going to come out on the devices? When are you going to actually have a BlackBerry with this?" And then they're going to go, "Oh crap, a year from now," because we aren't focusing on that right now, right? It just seems like they can do one thing at a time.
It will, but it's one thing at a time, and I think it's a good strategy to do a tablet first, because the tablet's a bit bigger, it's a bit easier to build than a smartphone.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about the 3G or anything like that. They don't have to worry about all the things with carriers. So I think I think that the playbook will sell well, like very well into corporations especially. But I think it's a really good strategy to try out their QNX OS or next generation OS on a tablet before they do it on a smartphone.
And you know what? It's really interesting that how opposite the RIM and Apple strategies are with their tablets and phones, but how they're going to end up in the same place, which is Apple went, let's produce a good piece of hardware and we'll throw the iPhone OS on it. We won't worry about the OS. We've got an OS. We'll just throw it on there, and then we'll get to the point in the future as we evolve it that we'll make, we'll fork the OS for it. It will end up in 24 months with great phone, great tablet, and both having good OSs. And RIM said, okay, we're going to end up in the same place, but we're going to start with having a great OS for a great tablet, and then bring it back onto phones. So that 18, 24 months from now, we have great phones with great OS and great tablets with great OS. So the endpoint's the same, they're just attacking it from a different standpoint.
Yeah, but it's interesting. But I mean, I heard that, we're getting really into the hardware here, but I heard that, like Steve Jobs had said, that they ran iOS on tablets before they ran it on phones. So they actually were developing a tablet internally before the iPhone timeline. So, and they thought, well, you know what, we can actually make a phone with this, and let's put out a phone to change the phone industry. But I think it might have been a tablet OS first. But I think we get too much into
the iPhone was the throwaway from the tablet.
Yeah, that's it. It's just
it's the most disruptive device, I think, in the history of in the history of computing. Was a throwaway from a tablet. We'll just give it a try. We'll test it. Yeah. Oh, okay. You know what's interesting about this whole thing is that you know, there's a lot of competition that is bound to come. And what do you think of this? So the Motorola Zoom is coming out sometime, I think at the end of March, right? They're all kind of tailored towards the end of March. I think the Zoom is actually going to be out sooner than that. But it's a 3G version. And because I guess the networks aren't capable yet, but soon after the launch of the Zoom, they're going to actually create a 4G version of it. And what they're saying is that, hey, buy it now, and then when we're ready for 4G, send it back in. We'll provide you with everything, package it all up, send it back in, and we'll equip it for 4G, but you won't have it for 6 days. And then we'll ship it back once it's all been done. And this is insane. So what they've just basically done is delayed their launch until everything's ready. Mm-hmm. I mean, who in their right mind is going to buy a 3G version and then send it back in for 6 days, kind of 4 weeks later, so that they can actually get the 4G version of it? Why not just wait? Why not just wait? I don't get that.
Is it a 4-week wait or is it a 4-month wait?
Oh, I don't know, but it doesn't matter, does it really? Like,
yeah, if you want the tablet, you may not want to wait 4 months for it. You may be quite okay with a 3G version of it right now.
Yeah.
And go, okay, well, I don't know when the 4G is going to be available.
No, it's soon after. No. It's soon after. Like it's yeah, relatively soon after. Yeah,
quote, is it soon after?
I know.
These things sometimes get delayed. So, if they're saying it's 4 or 6 weeks, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. If they realistically think it's going to be more like 4 months afterwards, then I think it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't be a necessarily kicker for me to not buy it right away, because I'd be getting a bunch of use out of it, and then they'd be upgrading the radio in it. Basically, that's what they're gonna swap with the radio. So,
well, it looks good. They all look good. They call the Zoom the first real competitor to the. We talked about this last week, the iPad, and I am really excited about this, and it kind of leads really well into the next story, which is this: how much money or how much revenue and market share are these guys? Does the iPhone and Android have when it comes to the store sizes? And we're talking some massive growth. And you've done a lot of work on this, Jeff, around trying to figure out the positive side of these numbers, because what they're saying is that year over year, Android's marketplace has grown in revenue by 861.5%. Granted, they were doing a puny amount of revenue, and puny is in context, $11 million a year in 2009, up to $102 million a year in 2010. But before we get deep into these numbers, these aren't very big numbers. 100 million is big, but not compared to the 1.8 billion that iTunes is actually generating. But interesting enough is that the Ovi store grew 719%. In fact, is in terms of out-generating the Android marketplace by a paltry $3 million. But this is and BlackBerry's second, obviously, with $165 million in revenue and a 7.7% market share, but 360% growth versus Apple's 131% growth. So this is who'd have thunk? I mean, this is a $2.1 billion industry with the four players, and growing at an insane rate and not stopping.
Yeah, and I think that what's really interesting about reading these statistics that were put out there is that they're incredibly useful statistics to see, and the revenue numbers are something that you don't often see compared. And historically, it's been really hard to figure out what revenue numbers are going to be from these stores and what they would turn into. And I think that what's interesting is to look and say, well, most of the news articles focus on either A, that iTunes is still, by far the dominant place revenue-wise for the market, or they focus on, depending if you're pro-Android or anti-Android, that Android grew by a huge percentage, or that Android's revenue is still so low. But when you look at it all in context and go, okay, well, the number of Android devices grew by, a similar ratio last year, so it looks like the store is probably growing at the rate of Android growth, which makes perfect sense, right? I mean, that's who you're selling your market to.
Yep.
So you can foresee that growth going this year, and it overtaking certainly the Nokia Ovi store, and potentially even overtaking BlackBerry App World as they improve the monetization on Android market and sell, buttloads of devices out there, far more than BlackBerry is going to sell. But it's really curious to look at the numbers in terms of a developer standpoint, not just in terms of overall market standpoint, because that's really what people developing apps need to look at. And half the articles out there are written by people who are developing apps or are focused on app developers or third-party developers or content providers, and they're talking about how iTunes is so amazing because this is where all the revenue is. But what they should be talking about is where a third-party developer can actually make money on the app. And Apple makes $1.8 billion in revenue on it, with 300,000 to 400,000 applications sharing that revenue. RIM makes 165,000 with 165 million, with around 20,000 to 25,000 applications. So the revenue potential for a BlackBerry application, all other things being equal, is much, much higher, like 80% higher than what you would get on iTunes.
Yeah, it's sheer volume. It was a lot more probably when there was 5,000 apps in App World, but based on your calculations, you're talking about a considerable amount difference when it comes to how much the average, we'll say average, if you lump them all in, BlackBerry application makes versus an iPhone app, and it's pretty staggering. Where this is, and I think Anthony, this plays well into what you did with Zeebu, right? BlackBerry's focus.
That's exactly it, and we saw that the most success that we had was on BlackBerry, and it's that number, right? So it's the lower number of apps. It's a signal to noise and less competition. Yep. So yeah, it definitely we've seen a lot more revenue from our BlackBerry apps. But it depends on the area. I think one of the things that a lot of developers look for is the ones that are looking for that huge payoff, right? All the biggest apps are on iTunes, guaranteed, right? So all the biggest selling apps overall are all iTunes apps. And it'd be really interesting to see what the curve of that looks like, not just the average, but what the actual, like where the median is straight and down. Everything.
It's straight
for
down.
Yeah.
Well, that.
Well, no, but that's what I mean. Like it's is there are there a ton of apps on iTunes making like $100 that are dragging the average down? Does it have a high median? Is the median revenue per app on iTunes better than the median revenue per app on App World?
Well, I would say that based on some research, some guys out west that I interviewed did a study of this based on the long tail of App Store, and it's a very, very, very long tail, obviously in App Store because of the sheer volume. But they did something where there was something like 220. Anyway, what it ended up being is close to 3% of the game publishers generated somewhere in the realm of 70 to 80% of the revenue, and the reviews and the feedback. So if you can just picture a graph, obviously, and the long tail, it just starts at the top and it plummets right down, and then it's basically a flat line with everything else. So there's a majority of revenue being generated from a very small minority of application developers and publishers on the App Store. And I think that it's a little bit more spread out when it comes to App World.
But that's the thing that would be really interesting, as Anthony mentioned, to look at is that, well, when you look at it from a macro level, you're right. It's basically a vertical line down towards you hit the long tail. But if you throw out the top so that what you look at is actually where it does that curve. If you look at that section of it and compare that to the BlackBerry App World or one of the other markets, how does that look? Because the top, there's always going to be the top percentage up there. It's probably less dramatic on App World as it is on the App Store. Yeah. But the key for developers is to say, yeah, you might get up there, but no matter which platform you're on, if you're up there, you're making tons of money. Yep. The key is when you look at what are you likely to make? What if you do okay? Yep. So what is your app going to make if you do okay? And if you're in that little kind of triangle curve, I think on App World, doing okay might be as good or much better than okay on iTunes, because okay on iTunes is often very short-lived as well, because you get someone who goes, wow, I did really good, I had a great month, and then next month, wow, I was totally off the charts and I made virtually no money. Yep. So what's the staying power like on App World compared to that?
And I agree. And based on our experience, Zeebu's experience, I would totally agree. I think on average, like if you do okay, on App World, because it's just 20,000 apps is not a lot of choice. People want good apps, and if you've got good apps, there's if you want good apps, you're more likely to be chosen by someone else.
Yep.
I mean, there are a ton of crappy apps on iTunes.
Yes.
But there are also a lot of really good apps on iTunes. So your competition is very fierce. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you can make money on any of the stores now. Android, I'm still not sure how much money you can make, but I think that'll get up just in sheer volume. But I think you make money on any of the stores.
Really, I mean, what you've seen, I know that a lot of companies have seen this. Is that so? Android is so decentralized and so loose that they need to tighten that up a little bit in order to be able to help the developers make money. Because what happened when App World was launched, right? There was a lot of companies that benefited immediately from App World, just basically wrapping around an application around their applications. Because I mean, iTunes is obviously an app store, but I mean, when Android gets their stuff together, it's going to be a monumental shift in that market. I mean, we should see some revenue, but because it's so scattered, because there's no gates, we've talked about this. Because there's no gates, I wouldn't trust every single application. So it's a lot of word of mouth. It's a lot of people endorsement, and not a lot of discovery right now happening on Android. But as soon as they wrap that up and they get that right, all of a sudden Android is going to Android should, just because of the sheer volume.
Oh yeah, Android volume alone will get much higher than it is. But so, I think it's cultural too. I think that you buy. So there's been a BlackBerry third-party software market for, well, depending how you measure it, but for years longer than there was for any other device.
They were first out.
First out, maybe except for J2, with the exception of J2 and me. But and for the iPhone, it's just sort of you buy an iPhone and you expect you're going to download apps. And Android, I just don't know enough about the market. If a lot of people who own Android devices just want to do basic stuff, they just sold them because they're really, really cheap alternatives. And it's like, okay, well, you can get this for almost the price of a feature phone, but it's got a great web browser and great email on it. And I don't care about apps. I just want a kind of a cool phone.
The other number to look at that we haven't talked about, which goes to that point, Anthony, is that 66% of the applications on Android are free, compared to 34% on iTunes and 26% on App World and Nokia. It's OV Store. So, when you have twice as many percentage-wise free applications, you're just discounting the amount of money you're making right there. So people are going and getting apps, but when 2/3 of what you see is free, you have a lot more percentage-wise choice of doing free applications than paid applications. And we're throwing a lot of numbers out here to unscrupulously plug a blog post I'm going to write this week. If you want to see the numbers in more detail, they'll actually be on my blog this week when I get them out there for you, so you can take a look at some of the numbers in more detail.
But and we'll when that is ready, we'll link to it, obviously. But one of the things that that's interesting here is because is it just the nature of Android? Is it still in that realm where maybe they don't want to install applications or pay for applications, and they're building it because of this, software has to be free, dude, kind of mentality. And it's true, because a lot of people early on in Android wanted it because it was open and you could root it and you could do the things that you wanted to do on the iPhone. But
and don't forget, for the developers, the hackers, Android, there's no approval process to get up on the Android store. It's $25 to get an Android developer account. There's nothing you have to buy. Everything is free. It's all. You don't have to buy a Mac and have your iTunes account. I guess the BlackBerry stuff is all free too, but it's a little bit harder to get into. But Android is easy to get into. Everything's free. The developer account is cheap. There's no approval. It's if you just want to develop mobile apps, and there's a huge developer community around it. So if you just want to develop mobile apps for fun, and a lot of people do, Android is the choice.
It's funny that the open source Android and part of the community that generated around that from being open source, and that old tenet of free as in speech, not as in beer for open source stuff, and then the Android market, which is trying to monetize, it's like free as in beer, not as in speech. It's kind of the mantra there.
Well, and I think that they're going to get close. I don't believe that Android is open source, and it's not, because there are multiple versions, and it has to be released by Google, and then it has to be released on the carriers. It's not open source, but and I think that they're going to clamp down even more, and it's going to be less open source as the revenue starts to generate, and they can see that the lessons that Apple's learned and RIM has learned will be reflected in Google, hopefully, and what they do with Android. But I think the biggest opportunity when it comes to Android is obviously Gingerbread and tablets, because right now there are only 16 applications available. So if anybody wants to get into something, I would start building applications for Gingerbread tablets right away. There are 16 applications. And by the looks of these, some of these are like already 200,000 downloads. And actually, one of them, Monster Madness, at the time of this has 0. So I think it's probably as a result of actually not having anything but enough tablets out there. But it's got the usual ones, and Angry Birds is obviously in there. Google Sky Map, Talking Tomcat Free. You can find these obviously on GigaOM has a great post on this. Huge opportunity in tablet applications for Gingerbread. That's where I would be focusing all my effort right now.
Yep. The swarm of Android tablets coming in. And,
oh yeah, like this is the next battlefront here. Is that if you can build that first brilliant app on this, that's where it's going to be.
Looking for developers to build your tablet apps for you. Right. I happen to know a great company in Ottawa that does that kind of software development. So,
there is a company, and it is called Ditheads. Just saying, that's all.
Did you ever expect me to be such a corporate whore when I wanted
I don't think anybody did. Not so soon. Not so soon. You haven't even started there yet, and you're still pimping it. I can't wait.
Wine him and take him out to San Francisco, and he's just singing their praises.
Oh, exactly.
I'm cheap and easy. What can I say?
There you go.
Well, yeah. And on that note, cheap and easy. Let's talk about Square. Square dropping their transaction fees for. Square's the company that was obviously started. It's a transaction processing company that was started by one of the founders of Twitter, and this is a company that basically there's this battle going on right now, which is in the payment space. And this is just like credit card swiping payment space. So this is like kiosks, in Apple stores, because it's the only place that I've seen it. But they've dropped their 15-cent charge per transaction. They still charge, I think, a 2.5 or 2.75% transaction fee, but they were also charging 15 cents per transaction on top of that. And so Jack Dorsey's the founder of this company. They've raised like $28 million. That was their last round, was $28 million, and they're taking on some pretty powerful competitors when it comes to this market. And they're on pace to do about $40 million in transactions, which is pretty astounding because I haven't seen any of these. They're not available in Canada yet, and they're up against a Verifone and Intuit, and they're going to be up at some point against carriers themselves as credit card and payment transactions. So. What do you think of this? Do you think this is the beginning of they're racing to free pretty quickly? Is this a good business model? Is this something that is Square just going to get bought and it's going to be the credit card companies like they have done before that offer this kind of service?
Well, I think there has to be some. They have to be thinking of an exit, but I think that they probably the business model supports them running just on the transaction fees, not the transaction fees, just on the percentage alone. Yeah. I think it's a case of, you're first to the market, you get to charge a little bit more upfront. And then when the market starts to mature, you've got to lower to what the expectation of the market is. So I think because they were first, they got to get a bit more money up front, and they probably expected that. And they likely expected that when other people entered in, that they would have to drop some of it, and there may be room in their business model to do that. The fact that they're taking on so much capital suggests that they're really more looking to build users and go for an exit than sustainable business model at this point. But I think they're the leader, right? And they got to charge. I don't know. Probably an exit, but then why would someone want to?
Well, they're valued at somewhere in the realm of $240 million. They say they're signing up, estimate about 100,000 merchants a month now.
So there you go.
Like that's a pretty
not necessarily.
That's
what is that, Jeff?
It's signing up 100,000 people. That means they've gone to their website, the merchants, and said, "Okay, I'm interested." Not 100,000 merchants that are like shipping the Square and launching them using it in stores necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I think that it's interesting that their transaction fees that were like 15 to 17 cents or something like that per transaction, which are completely irrelevant on transactions over, I don't know, well, they're 2.75% of a transaction fee, right? Of the
total value of the transaction.
Now, so what's 15 cents there? You're talking with $100 over like a few $100 transaction is that 15 cents right there, right? Or am I doing this wrong? Like
no,
50.
Right.
No, it's a few tens of dollars.
Yeah.
To get to 2.75. So
yep.
because they're targeting merchants of like physical goods in stores too, not merchants of 99-cent apps.
Yep.
Their 2.75% is going to be a lot more than when we think of mobile transactions right now getting 2.75%. They're not getting 2 cents a transaction at 2.75. They're getting maybe $2 a transaction at 2.75% for a lot of these transactions.
But it's like PayPal. I mean, PayPal charges that much as well, right? So,
exactly. But PayPal also, I guess PayPal does do physical goods in terms of like auctions and you can buy stuff that's shipped to you online rather than in stores having a physical infrastructure in the store to do it.
Yep.
But it's interesting I think they probably can be profitable on 2.75% of transactions if they can get the volume through and do it. And it's really interesting to make sure that we have that big break between what they're doing, charging 2.75% and calling it mobile payments, versus what carriers and what Apple and RIM and Google and everybody is doing and charging 30% for theirs, because that seems like a huge difference, 30% to 2.75%. Yeah. But the key is to look at who is actually using the Square device and the Square service to make transactions, and what the average dollar value per transaction is going to be on Square services. So being high enough, they should be able to make money. And quite honestly, I don't know why Visa or MasterCard or someone didn't buy them before they had a $240 million valuation. But
Visa is actually, I think they're doing a pilot in Europe on this very thing. I mean, a swiper that attaches basically to the bottom of an iPhone, and they have the ability they have the infrastructure and the ability to do this. This is just I think this is an interim step. I like the idea. They push things, but this is what happens with early innovators is they often don't win in this battle. And the incumbents, I did an interview on Untether with Greg Hammermaster. He's from Sage Payment Solutions, Sage Payment Solutions, and we talked about this and in depth, and you can find it on the site. But really, what he came to the conclusion is that that this is just an interim step. It's like a time where there's a lot of opportunity to innovate, but what happens ultimately is that the credit card companies don't give up here, right? The credit card companies have the infrastructure, the payment infrastructure, they have the trust and the support. They tie into every accounting system and POS in the world. I mean, that's something that once they're facing, or they've turned their company and are actually aiming at this, like it seems like Visa's doing in Europe right now. Again, they're not going to lose this battle. They're not going to give up any of this revenue. At some point, you're going to see every merchant with an iPhone and a Visa swiper, or a MasterCard swiper, or an Amex swiper, right?
Yeah. Well, especially if you see them valued at $240 million. If Visa spent $240 million on dongles to ship out to basically every single Visa licensee in a physical store, because they're going to pay less than $1 per dongle, they could basically give them all free to everybody who already accepts Visa, and boom. Like, how is Square worth $240 million right now? Because Visa can basically spend that money and put them out of business.
That's exactly it. I mean, this is the battle. Is that if you're gonna, I love this. I mean, I love companies that pick a battle. With some of the incumbents, and because what it does is it moves the technology forward. That's what it does. It moves things forward quickly. And if you're going to wait for the credit card companies to disrupt what they're doing, they're not going to do it. It's why I believe that you need a new company in there as well. In the mobile space, that's really going to push e-wallet, mobile cash, mobile credit cards much faster than the credit card companies are, because they've spent all this money building plastic things with security built in and holograms and biometric stuff, and all of a sudden that's going to disappear, and that's threatening to them because they don't understand it. So you need this, but this is part of a dog eat dog world. I mean, Norm, right, from Cheers.
I still think Square could do well on the, incumbents or small innovative, like the early innovators can win. You think about it from the point of view of individual. So a lot of their users are going to be small, individuals taking credit card payments. small mom and pop shops taking credit card payments, and those people have actually got a lot of brand loyalty. They find something that they like, and they'll just keep using it.
Yeah.
And I think that I think they could do all right. But
would you pick a Square solution over Visa?
Well, yeah, but tons of people use. Well, there's no really good alternative, but.
And the other thing is that I think Square, and this could be totally wrong, and if I'm wrong, roast me here. But Square, I don't know that Square integrates with the most popular accounting systems and POS systems, and that's where they don't. You've got to create those relationships, and I've heard of companies that would love to leverage Square but can't because it's just not an open environment. I don't even know if they have an open. You can.
That's it. It's going to be interesting to see what their plan is. You're right. The thing about Square is that there's no network effect. So it doesn't really matter if they've got 100 million people using it or 10,000 people using it. It's the same to me as someone evaluating it.
Yeah, it's kind of like here's a Canadian reference. It's like Ben Johnson against Carl Lewis in the '88 Olympics. It's like Square is Ben Johnson. It's like off to the fastest start, world record, and then it's like, oh, steroids, dude, you're out, right? And the incumbent kind of strolls in and wins. That's just a Canadian reference there.
I could see. You know what? I was kind of more up on Square before listening to your arguments, but I'm.
That's right.
And hence, Square launches a new era in mobile innovators that are on steroids.
Exactly. Well, if it's anything, yeah, they could do that. That would be a time. It would be like, look, dude, I can code 9 times faster than you. Right? Anyway. So, speaking of money and simple transactions, which I think is part of this whole process, it's got to be frictionless. What do you think about this FTC charge that they're actually looking at Apple because they've made it too easy for your kids to buy apps or buy in-game purchases?
Let me ask you guys a question because you guys are parents.
Yes.
So I'm gonna ask you this question, and then I'm kind of being facetious, but I'm not really being facetious.
Yeah.
But do you give your kids your credit card and say, go nuts, use it?
All the time. No. No.
So why, I don't understand what the issue is here. Like, don't give your kid a whole whackload of cash or a credit card. Don't give them the phone that they can charge stuff on.
But you know what? One of these, the big thing is that it's if I have bought something, it's a certain circumstance, right? So ultimately what happens is that when I buy something on my iPhone or my iPad, and anybody does, it leaves a window open for 15 minutes. So it basically stores your password for 15 minutes. So if I buy an app, it says, okay, open it up for 15 minutes. So I can just go and buy as many apps as I can in those 15 minutes, and it won't ask me for a password. And then after 15 minutes, I think, of idle time, the next time I try to buy something, my password comes up. So what the FTC is saying is that, or what they're looking at is that, is this a safeguard against kids? Because apparently kids have gone in there and racked up a number of bills.
Well, the specific thing that started this, so Capcom's Smurfs game for iPad, and iPhone, it's the top grossing iPad app because
of mistakes.
They actually were summoned down because so that window also applies to in-app purchases, right? Yeah. So Smurfs is a free game, and you have to still sign in with your iTunes account to download a free game. And then once you get in there, you can click on all these things and buy Smurf berries and little Smurf houses and Smurf mushrooms and stuff. And so kids click on this stuff, and they'll be like, "Yeah, okay, I'm going to buy some Smurf berries. I'm going to buy some of this." And yeah, they're the top grossing app. And man, as a owner of a kids app company, why didn't I think of that?
Damn, that's the greatest thing.
And you're with my business model, and but so people from Capcom got summoned to Apple headquarters to talk about this because it was an issue. They made it, it was kid-friendly purchasing, and parents would just download it, and the kids would start playing it, and before they knew it, bought a whole bunch of, you've got a credit card charge for like 18 bushels of Smurf berries.
Yeah, but it's like handing your kid your phone that's unlocked and having them call China for an hour, and then complaining that, it's too easy to call China on your phone and rack up charges for it. Don't give your kids something that they can charge without abandon on. So don't give them your unlocked account. Give them their own iTunes account with gift card set up, so they only have a limit to spend on it.
Well, granted, but they shouldn't. Kids, I don't think, should be spending anything on the iTunes account. But the thing is that this was done in the context. It's not them going into the phone app and picking a number and dialing it, or them going into the email app and typing on email, or even them going into the app store and buying an app. This is them in the context of a game, clicking on a cute cartoon thing of Smurf berries and charging like $50 to their parents' iTunes account.
Why didn't you think of that, Anthony? Why didn't you think of that?
Why didn't I think of that? It's so smart.
Great.
It is, man. I'm no, but it's just So I don't know. I think it's it's an unforeseen consequence of having the. I don't know if Capcom intentionally did it. I don't think they did. I think it was just an unforeseen consequence of that 15-minute window. And I think what Apple could do very easily is just, or what Capcom should do is just put a warning at the beginning of the app saying, But
every time you make an in-app purchase, so you can use up all of your credits. If you have to make another in-app purchase, it's not a one-click process. Buying in-app stuff on iTunes isn't one click and you've bought it. It's a click and a confirmation that you actually want to buy it.
Okay.
Go through. So,
have you seen kids navigate these things?
Man, no, I'm not saying that it's not easy to do. I'm saying that there is a warning in there. It's not that you use all of your berries up and suddenly you click again and without warning you've just bought 50 more. No, you click again and it says you're out of berries. Do you want to buy more? Yes. How many berries do you want? Then you go through a step.
But but you're thinking from the point of view of an adult, but a 4-year-old who's playing this game.
No.
They see okay.
Well,
I agree. 100% the kids are going to walk through there and make that purchase. Yeah. What I'm saying is, if you if you understand what you're giving your kids is what you should understand. You shouldn't just be giving your kids something without understanding what it is. If you've gone through it once, as a parent, now it's your responsibility to know, okay, you know what? You can make in-app purchases on my account. And that's part of the terms of service of having an iTunes account. So if they're going to be using my account, I need to be aware of that or give them their own account.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And I think it's interesting because it sort of shows the unintended uses of these devices, right? So suddenly, it's my company, right? So we not the ones that were charging tons of money to credit cards, but making apps for kids. And I couldn't have imagined a company like that 2-3 years ago, apps for kids for mobile phones. But there's companies that do that. So it's sort of it's an interesting how ubiquitous and how flexible these devices have become.
Well, you know what I think it is, though? I'm not sure. I agree that it certainly shows. I won't call it an unintended consequence because I think it is an intended consequence that people can make purchases over the course of 15 minutes. What's different is that adults and parents who are illiterate in what they're giving their kids, like not putting a passcode on your PVR or DVR, your kids can order movies. And they can order R-rated movies if you don't put a passcode on it. Yep. So it's the same kind of thing that parents need to understand what they're giving their kids. And what this is showing is that parents are prioritizing placating their kids or making their kids happy or stopping them from crying or bugging them while they're in a car ride more than they are finding out about what they're actually putting in their kids' hands. Yep. Because, if kids went and downloaded porn apps off it as well, there'd be this huge outroar, oh my God, how come my kid can download a porn app off of it?
Well,
it's because you can't.
Sure, honey. Sure, honey. Yeah, it was the kid. Well, sure, honey.
And you're right. It's part of. So the two things that did surprise me about this story. One is that Smurfs. I mean, it is targeted to adults too, right? Because we're people who watch Smurfs are guys our age, right? We're watching them as kids and total nostalgia, right? So I downloaded the app. I didn't actually buy anything in it, but it's fun because it's Smurfs and you have the Smurf la 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 la. And if you don't think of one, that's going to be the Weekend Mobile theme song from now on. Yes. But the other thing is, but it does show. So it's I think it's a problem that's going to get worse and worse. And probably this is not the exact context to discuss it, but modern parenting, right? So parents had to deal with, this
yet another thing.
Have to deal with the internet.
Yep.
Deal with mobile devices and now mobile apps and how they work, and not just in terms of in-app purchases, but in terms of how kids navigate them, what effects that has on the way kids, on the way kids learn things or the way they expect things. Like they expect things to be more interactive. What effects does it have, for a kid sitting for an hour with an iPad in some awkward position? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Like eyesight and all that kind of stuff. Parenting is just complicated.
Don't have kids.
And it gets more and more complicated with all this. And parents had to deal with television when it came out. They had to deal with everything. But it's just yeah.
But is this really just this generation's SMS overage fees? Like the carriers didn't. There was no FTC investigation when parents were charged $200 or $300 a month for text messaging because it went over the allotted amount. It was just like they scolded the kids and said, there was no way to limit that. So this is just one of those.
I think this is going to be. I think it's that. I think it's going to be a combination of, like Jeff said, parents becoming more informed, and it's going to be Apple doing something simple like having an option to have like a window of like a minute after you purchase something.
It's funny though.
Or to confirm. But
I'm kind of on Jeff's side here. Is that and on Apple's side because look. Apple, it's not Apple's responsibility to be the parent or to patrol this. It's like when you sign your end user license agreement for iTunes, you agree to that this is the way that it works. And if you didn't read it, which nobody did, but if you didn't read it,
pages long, right?
Yeah, you signed it, and this is exactly what it was. And it's not Apple's responsibility. I mean, I've run companies, and people have come up to me after and said, "Oh my God, there was a tax implication to this." And I said, "Well, yeah, I asked you to go and get it checked out by a lawyer and an accountant, and you did, and you signed it. I'm not going to babysit you and help you make the right decisions. It's the same thing here, right? Ultimately,
they're not. I don't think they're liable for anything, but it's a PR thing, right? So it's well, yeah, we noticed that there was an issue. It was unintended. There was no, we're not admitting to any foul play, but we're going to put an option in to make this a little bit more kid friendly. Yeah. Where the parent could set this, could set so you can't do in-app purchases without entering a password again, or something like something stupid and simple. Capcom will say something like, "We can, we're going to tailor our game." They're not responsible; they don't have to, but they will do it because they're big and they want people to keep downloading the game.
Yep.
They'll put something in saying that we can, disable in-app purchases unless you enter a special option screen or something like that. So they'll do that, not because they have to, not because they're legally liable to, but just because of the the optics of it, because they have to.
If they make those changes to the way you enter your password, and the way that the window of 15 minutes works, I would say 5 to 10% decrease in App Store revenue.
So, I think that they will make an option. So there's that's what I think they might do.
Because people will go in and turn their Facebook privacy setting options around without understanding what they are or are not turning on and off, because they go, you know what, I'd rather just be safe and have it all private. And they don't. Then they're like, how come you can't see my stuff? It's like, because you made everything private. And then you go, oh, well, I just meant to do this, but I didn't read the instructions. So they're going to, in order for that option to be visible, Apple's going to have to present it to users. Otherwise, it's not validly there. Like it's not really there if they don't present it to users. If they do,
you guys.
So I say that Apple would do it not because they actually care about solving the problem that is not actually a problem, but they're going to do it because they have to be seen to have done something.
These are the same guys that are doing a product launch. The CEO of Nintendo is launching GDC.
Yeah.
So you know what? We've heard rumors of this along the lines since the very first iPad, which is Retina display or a front-facing camera on an iPad or an iPhone that detects facial features, that loads different profiles for the user that is using that device, right? So maybe this is coming down the road, especially for the iPad, where you hold it up and it identifies you as you, and it loads your prefs, right? And then it'll be your kid, and it'll load a separate set of prefs, and ultimately it'll lock things out. But I don't think I thought this was going to be a short story. My God, we're 9 hours into this one.
I run a kids app company.
I know.
That's a story we should explore on a future episode. Is the future use of facial recognition to enable multiple user accounts on the same iPhone? Because right now that's a huge can of worms for Apple.
Yeah, it is, but it's going to come ultimately. I think that you'll start to see this happening. So I want to finish this. Are we done with that? I don't want to end it, but I don't think we're going to win this. I want to see you guys, because it looks like you're in the same room. I want to see you guys reach over and start pounding on each other. But the last thing I want to talk about is we're going to come back to BlackBerry, because we can't leave this company because it's obviously Canadian. They've got some exciting things coming up, so ShopSavvy, which is a company that I don't know if you guys know. I interviewed one of the co-founders of ShopSavy for Untether.tv. It's a great session, And it's what started off as a barcode scanner company that did product lookups, and they've gone further. They've actually, just integrated with Groupon. I love these guys. But they noticed in their logs, they did this blog post this week. They noticed in their logs that Shop Savvy is available on Android and iPhone, and they noticed in their logs something odd coming from Waterloo, Ontario, which is where RIM's headquarters is. And what they found out was, this is in January, is that they found out that the app had been run a number of times, 2 or 3 or 4 times, on a BlackBerry 8600, and on a BlackBerry 8300, and a BlackBerry 8520. And they thought it odd simply because they don't have a BlackBerry version. So is this that little nugget of proof that RIM is actually looking at running Android applications on the BlackBerry? Or is this just a fluke?
Well, I mean,
or some guy rooted his phone and made it identify itself as a BlackBerry. That was funny.
to create an activity like this, yeah.
RIM has a history where the RIM's engineers have a history of not being aware necessarily of the amount of information that a device actually sends to third parties when they run third-party apps on or visit third-party websites. So, at Magmic we found out about devices before RIM would even whisper about them because we'd see the model numbers come up on our website logs or our traffic logs or things like that. So, I think it's a regular course of business to see oddball devices out of Waterloo that are running weird things you're not expecting to hit your sites. Is this confirmation that RIM's working on it? I'd say it's confirmation that somebody's looking into it.
But of all the apps, Shop Savvy. I mean, so anybody else who's out there who's built an application that doesn't run on a BlackBerry, check your logs, would you? Let us know. Because Shop Savvy, I mean, it's a great application, but it's not a mass market application right now. So let's, and maybe that's why they did it. Because I guess if Angry Birds was, they would have noticed. If Rovio would have noticed that it was running on a BlackBerry. Yeah,
it's interesting that if it is what it is, and it probably is, it means RIM is at least. It doesn't mean that they will necessarily support Android on BlackBerries.
Yeah,
but it means they're far enough along that they're actually trying to do it. So it might just be evaluation. But we'll see.
There's another possibility that's going to throw water over this whole thing, which is that, I don't know what analytics service Shop Savvy is using, if it's their own or if it's a third-party analytics service, but, I've had analytics services report some of our Magnet games running on a Nokia smartphone, which they totally do not run on whatsoever. And it's just because that the analytics service is interpreting the data incorrectly.
Oh, it's just like Flurry messing with everyone.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that there's that 50-50 shot that whatever analytics data they're using is just interpreting the devices incorrectly rather than them actually having Android running on some BlackBerries. Because some of those BlackBerries you mentioned are not really powerful enough to be running the QNX operating system.
Well, they say that, I mean, these are isolated incidences. Obviously, there were four incidents in January and in early February. And they don't say what analytics. So it was on Flurry.
Flurry. Yeah. So pretty.
Flurry has done that to me a number of times, showing up devices that are not the actual devices. Sometimes it gets corrected later on as they update their data, but So
it's Flurry,
I'd say.
Okay, suspect, but I hope, because certainly this is a good move for RIM. This is, the rumors have been floating around. Hopefully this happens. Certainly opening it up to the. There aren't 200,000 quality apps in the marketplace, but certainly there's got to be 30,000 apps that automatically have a new market and a massive market in RIM, which is great.
Yes, and a better development environment. But they're making moves in that direction with QNX anyway, so it's a good thing.
Episode 6, boys. So, Jeff, you are off tomorrow bright and early. On Sunday bright and early to GDC, sunny San Fran. You'll let us know how things go there. I'm sure that we'll hear from you as you peruse what's going on at GDC.
Yep, for sure. 6 a.m. Sunday morning through the rest of the week. So we'll see how busy I am. But usually San Francisco is a pretty busy town for the week that I'm usually there. But hoping to queue up a couple of blog posts or get them onto them this week anyways while I'm there, take a break and do a couple of things. So
all right, and we'll touch base when you get back and get the complete rundown of how GDC went. from your perspective. And yeah, we'll look forward to that. So Anthony, thanks very much. Jeff, thanks very much. Remember, you can go to Anthony's site, zeebu.com, or you can go to about.me/JeffBacon. And if you're finding this, you're either finding it on one of those sites or on tether.tv. So it's pretty much the place to be. We appreciate your feedback. More feedback would be great. Untether@gmail.com, or wherever you find this, leave a comment, and we will endeavor to get back to you. Really appreciate you guys watching and listening and the feedback that we've received. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Sing a happy song. La 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 la, Smurf the whole day long.